people aren't brave enough to ask questions with everybody listening, but you give permission to write them. And there they are. One thing I want to know first, how many people today experience some peacefulness? If you could show me your hands. Don't be shy. Okay, see, now that we're 4 days into it, more of these peaceful moments. I was talking a little about some experiences I had in Ladakh 2 years ago, earlier today, and I wanted to relay a little story. It won't take very long. And quite a funny story. There's these incredible views in the Himalayas. If anyone who's been knows that, you've probably seen pictures. So Ladakh is Himalayan India. Actually, until recently it was a Buddhist kingdom, and the culture is completely different to Indian culture. It's more like Tibetan Buddhist culture. Very nice people, very friendly, a lot of faith, very gentle, and some beautiful scenery. Hardly any trees. The trees grow alongside the river on the mountains. There's no trees. So anyway, one of the places that we went was this lake, Himalayan lake, called Lake Somariri. And so I walked from the tent where we were staying, and this was at 4,700 meters elevation. And after some pretty serious headaches, adapted to the altitude. And so I walked and walked and walked, and then I found this beautiful small pebble beach. It was only about 3 meters wide, 1.5 meters in depth, and it was right up against that lake, and that lake was like a mirror. This beautiful sky and this beautiful mountains across the lake, snow-capped, and if you looked that way you could see all the way to Tibet. Very grand, beautiful, majestic view, and I was meditating there. And about halfway through the meditation I heard these footsteps. And then the footsteps got close, and then I heard this noise of "Ah!" And so I opened my eyes and I looked, and there was a woman there, and she said, "I've come all this way to find the perfect meditation spot, and you got here first," she said. And then I thought, it's a bit of a shame. So I asked her, and she was a German lady who worked in the airport in Berlin, and she'd got a few days off, and she'd got a affordable ticket, and she'd come all that way, connecting flight from Delhi, and rushed up the mountain without taking time to adjust to the altitude, and got to this remote town by this lake, and rushed to the edge of the lake to try to find the perfect meditation spot, only to find that someone was there. And I said to her, "Well, I should be happy to give it to you if it means that much to you." And she said, No, it's okay." And she kind of sat down and had a little chat with her. But what was interesting, the reason I want to bring this to mind is that actually, even though I was in apparently the perfect meditation spot, my meditation back at the monastery is much better. And I didn't tell her that, but it's like, it's not really about the place, it's not really about the view. But for people, I think for people who aren't skilled in meditation, a view with an absence of things. So that's the thing about the Himalayas. There's no trees, there's this big sky. And then I think less oxygen. When there's less oxygen, you think less. So people who aren't skilled in meditation, they like to drag themselves halfway across the world, climb these mountains, and they have a few peaceful moments. And but here we are. I just asked you, maybe 20, 25 people raised their hands who had some peaceful moments today, and we're not in the Himalayas, are we? We're in Malaysia. And so it's not really about the environment. What it's about is maintaining the mindfulness consistently, and it's about sense restraint, and it's about having a foundation of generosity and being virtuous, and then putting forth the effort. And then what happens is that sense of panoramic space opens up in the heart, right where you are, with your eyes closed. So you don't need to go to Ladakh. And so now I'll answer some questions. Was anyone thinking of going to Ladakh? How do we explain that the mother of the Buddha-to-be died soon after childbirth? That was such a meritorious deed. The mother of the Buddha, after dying, was reborn instantaneously in Tushita heaven, and reborn as a man, apparently. To be the mother of the Buddha is not a fluke. So we understand that this person has made a vow and is actually a being with a particularly strong barami. It's not easy to have that honor. So I don't think it's the ripening of any bad karma that the mother of the Buddha passes away after the Bodhisattva is born. It might be that the merit is so profoundly vast and that that is ripening very quickly, that Tushita heaven is called the heaven of the contented. So what the beings in Tushita heaven feel is a uninterrupted experience of contentment. So I don't think there's a negative karma ripening. I expect that it's a very, very profound merit that's ripening. And then for those people who believe that the Buddha did go and teach the Abhidhamma in Dhammatimsa, this is commentarial, then the Buddha taught the mother who was reborn as a deva and established by then him in the fruit of stream entry. So I suspect, I don't know if the Buddha did spend pansa in heaven, but I have no doubt that he could teach devas, and I have no doubt that he would have reciprocated the kindness of his mother by teaching her, because he did teach his father, and the father did attain one of the stages of enlightenment, and he taught his son, and his son became an arahant. And even his surrogate mother was established in Dhamma also. So I would assume that the Buddha's mother was very well taken care of. We have to have a very broader view, not just look at that one life. And Mahamaya Devi, a being with very special karma. Dear Ajahn, can we just sit on a chair to meditate? Do we have to go through all the aches and pain in the body before we can achieve samadhi? I started quite late in life. I am afraid it's too late for my body to adapt. Thank you. You can sit in a chair. You can sit in a chair, and the issue would be not a too comfortable one. So if it's mostly knee pain, and if you really did start late, then you sit in a firmish chair, and the issue is that you want your back to be fairly straight, and then just experiment. If there is less pain, and if your mind does become more peaceful, sitting in a chair is fine. And you might want to experiment with picking up one leg, putting one leg on the chair, if that doesn't put too much pressure on the knee, and just see what that's like. The thing to look at is what's the result. So if you sit and you're sitting with pain, by the way, I'm going to challenge this desire to achieve samadhi. I don't have such a good feeling about this. What I would like to know is, when you're working with the pain in the sitting posture, is there a growth in sati? Is what I'm interested to know. I'm not sure who asked the question. And I want to know, is there a growth in patient endurance? And I want to know, is there a growth in wisdom? I want to know if is it not the case that many beautiful qualities are being produced by you practicing with pain? I'm interested to know that. And I'd be interested to see that if you're sitting in a chair, even if the mind has more calm, I want to see, is the mindfulness as clear? Because sometimes having a little bit of pain to work with gives us something to do. And makes us, we can see, is there craving, is there aversion? You see it around the pain. But certainly it's worth experimenting, and you can only, that's all we can do, is try it. Sit in a chair and compare. One thing I like to encourage people to do is at the end of the session, because often in the session we're too close to our hindrances, the mind actually gets more sensitive, and then you become more sensitive to dukkha, and you think that the mind isn't peaceful. But what I like to get people to do is at the end of the session, that you have a look, get up and start walking around, and is the mind, does there seem to be some clarity? Do things seem bright? Does the mind feel well and happy? Because if it does, you're actually getting some good results from your sit, even though there's pain there. In terms of achieving samadhi, it's not really something that one achieves. I think samadhi would be better understood as things that one has let go of. So samadhi is the result of letting go of the hindrances. And desire for jhana is one of the hindrances. So we have the aspiration, and that is skillful, but basically as soon as you sit, you have to drop that. The aspiration gets you to your cushion. Very good. As soon as you're on your cushion, you better drop desire, because that's the very thing that will stop you getting jhana. The desire you have to have when you sit on your cushion is to be with the breath as it is in the moment. That's the appropriate level of desire. And then practicing contentment and patience. So it's with an attitude of contentment and an attitude of patience that and then consistency of sati. Then one sees hindrances as hindrances, then those hindrances get weaker. Then through letting go of the hindrances, one develops samadhi. Or samadhi develops. It's not really one that is developing the samadhi. The samadhi develops by what one is able to let go of. In general, I think it's important that people understand that attaining jhana isn't very common in this age, and that it's one of the reasons I'm putting focus on the 5 spiritual powers, samadhi being one of them. And Ajahn Chah didn't place a lot of emphasis in general upon trying to encourage people to try to get jhana. He did talk about samadhi, he talks about the result of samadhi, he encouraged people to practice a lot, but he put a lot of emphasis upon right view and wisdom, cultivating and letting go. Every other Ajahn Chah talk is talking about letting go, and he's not talking about trying to get anything. And he's talking about understanding the mind as it is and understanding the body, and he talks a lot about understanding a body as a body and letting go of one's attachment to the body. So this is a multi-pronged approach, which is a lot of emphasis upon mindfulness and wisdom. And as mindfulness and wisdom develop, then samadhi also develops. But it's not necessarily a quick process. And so we have to train ourselves to enjoy the mindfulness and the wisdom that we have, and enjoy the whole process. And if we do this, if we think, I'm just after this samadhi, this elusive samadhi, and then we don't get it, well then we're not noticing the good things that have been being developed along the way. So samadhi is one of the 5 powers we were talking about. You've got your faith, your sense of refuge, very important. You've got energy, putting forth energy in practice. You've got your mindfulness, and then you've got samadhi, and then you have wisdom. So you want a well-rounded practice. And then Ajahn Anand talks about Kanika Samadhi as being samadhi. So the samadhi that you have is the samadhi that you have. It's not that you don't have any. So if you have a peaceful mind for 2 or 3 minutes, that's samadhi. And if you have a peaceful mind for 20 minutes, that's also samadhi. And you just train yourself to incline the mind towards the peacefulness that you can achieve by letting go of the hindrances and by being with your meditation object with mindfulness. And then you will experience these moments of peacefulness, and they will go longer and they will go deeper. But it's not happening because you want jhana. It's happening because you're sustaining in a consistent way all of these other things. Generosity, ethics, mindfulness, wisdom. And then, patience. It's really important to be patient. Sometimes people try really, really hard and then they get fed up and they give up. So that's a danger. It's a danger of too much desire. It's just another way to look at it is surrendering. Basically, we don't have a choice. I don't think we have a choice. Whether you get jhana or not, you don't have a choice but to keep practicing. And so you just practice for practice's sake. And then you do have a choice. You have a choice to let delusion stay in the mind and guide you in all sorts of painful directions. Or you have a choice to practice to the best of your ability. And actually modern people, because of our thinking habit, there's a strength to this as well. It's not. This is one of the things that obstructs jhana, is the speculation and proliferation, and the thinking mind, the busy thinking mind. But people who are educated and intelligent and reflective can train the reflective mind. And this is very valuable because this deepens wisdom, drop by drop by drop. And this is what we've been doing when you investigate a body, the nature of a body, when you investigate the sense bases and you're asking those questions. Is there a self here? Is there a self here? Is there a self here? You're investigating. And this is very important. Ajahn Achalo actually said he has a lot of samadhi and he cultivated a lot of samadhi in his past lives, and he said actually too much samadhi without wisdom is very dangerous. Because when you have samadhi, the kilesa and the hindrances can be suppressed. But when the samadhi degenerates, if you haven't developed mindfulness and wisdom, then the kilesa come into the mind very thick, very powerful, and you make a lot of unskillful karma, and you can get really deluded. So it's good that mindfulness and the wisdom develop. Ajahn Achalo also said actually to get jhana too soon is dangerous. He said, he was teaching this, I remember many years ago, he said, because what can happen is if you get an experience of samadhi and then you're not very mindful afterwards and some kilesa come in the mind, some kind of sensuality or some kind of aversion, and you're not mindful enough to catch it and you start to feed it, all of that energy of the samadhi goes into the kilesa and you can end up with a very serious problem. So you need to have the other spiritual powers to keep a check on the samadhi, because there is right samadhi and there's skillful samadhi and unskillful samadhi. And it's good to keep in mind that even someone like Maharaj has a lot of samadhi, a lot of psychic powers, but wrong view. And it's interesting you can read the Mahamoggallana talks about his past lives in the suttas. Just a few lives before being Mahamoggallana was Mara. And you can see how it could happen, because Mahamoggallana is very interested in power, obviously. He's going to be foremost in psychic powers, equal to power in as the Buddha. So if you like power, it's like Darth Vader, you can choose the power of the dark side. And then all of a sudden you've got power and you've got a really powerful job in samsara, but you do have to go to a Vijji hell after you die for a very long time because of all of the obstructing of good beings. So Mahamoggallana was having this conversation with Mara when Mara came and tried to trick him, and he said, Mara, I tried something like this a couple of lifetimes ago, and this is what happened. I ended up in hell being chopped to pieces and swallowing hot metal and suffering for a long, long time. So if I was you, I'd go away. And Mara did go away. So, it's important to understand that samadhi by itself is like fire. You can either burn up kilesas with it, or you can burn yourself and others with it as well. So just as a few words of warning about trying really hard to get jhana, I would suggest letting jhana come in its own time as a natural result of maintaining all of these other good things. I know some other ajahns have put a lot of emphasis on jhana, but as far as I'm aware, Ajahn Chah didn't. And having listened to Ajahn Achalo a lot, he also hasn't put that much emphasis on it. So an Ajahn Biek, advice from Ajahn Biek, that using the reflective mind to deepen that wisdom barami is a good thing. That's the strength that many of us have. Some people have a natural gift for samadhi, some people, depending on how much they've practiced it in the past life. But for most people it'll be a gradual growth, and it'll be more about kanika samadhi and upajjhara samadhi, and you want to use the samadhi that you have to become very wise. At least that's Ajahn Achalo's perspective. And you don't have to believe me either. Okay, talking about dispassion yesterday in the Anasalakkhana Sutta. How do we differentiate between dispassion and depression? Good question. So when the mind is depressed, it's very dull and there's no energy. So the experience of depression is a low energy and dullness. And that's actually a mind which is affected by, it's kind of like a form of aversion. It's because, having a reaction of grief or sadness or depression about something. So it's probably within the spectrum of the ill will and aversion hindrance. So what you can notice is the lack of clarity and the lack of energy, and then you know that's not helpful. Dispassion is very powerful. There is a sense of disgust, but there's a lot of clarity there and some peacefulness, and there's a sense of pulling inwards. And with that pulling inwards, there's an increase in the radiance of the mind. So it's tricky, and this is what you have to notice, is there is a kind of repulsion, there is a pulling away. And in that very act of pulling away, there's an increase in clarity and peacefulness. So that's how you notice the difference between depression and dispassion, at least in my experience. Ajahn, if I cannot meditate for 1 hour or even 45 minutes due to pain, does this mean I would not be able to attain the jhanas? Would it be better if I practice lying down? So again, thank you for helping me make my points repeatedly. If one had the accumulated samadhi barami that one was about to attain, that it was likely that one was going to attain jhanas, if one had that quality of samadhi latent, and this is what you need a latent level of samadhi barami to be able to get for those jhanas to ripen. It's not something that you do in one lifetime. At least that's how Ajahn Achalo has explained it to me. And it's dependent on how much dana and how much sila and how much meditation for lifetimes. And the Buddha says this as well, that a wonderful quality of the Dhamma is that it deepens gradually and slowly, like the ocean. So those people who get jhana quickly already spent 100 lives on it. And what happens quickly is the result of all of that. So how it would seem to me is, if you had that kind of samadhi and you were training with sati, the samadhi would also help the sati to be very, very strong, and knee pain wouldn't be a problem. So if you're literally on the brink of jhana, but your knee pain is obstructing you, no. You're not on the brink of jhana. And it's okay. It's okay not to be on the brink of jhana. Just basically, you have to train in mindfulness and patience with the knee pain. And yes, experiment with a chair, please. If you can sit longer, because sitting for longer periods does increase the chance of developing more samadhi if one is maintaining the sati for a longer period of time. So if you can only sit on the floor for half an hour but you can sit on a chair for an hour and a half, please be my guest. Let's get lots of chairs. And maintain the awareness of the mindfulness of the object and stay with it for a really long time, and you'll probably find that you will increase samadhi. But stop trying to attain jhana. I mean, it's very seductive, isn't it? Boundless bliss. Sounds very nice. Ajahn Achalo keeps talking about looking at dukkha. What was all that he was going on about weariness? Where's the bliss? I mean, it's fair enough that we want bliss, but you do get it, and you get it for moments. When you practice correctly, you get your moments where you let go, and you get moments of tranquility, and you get moments of rapture, and it's there if you meditate correctly. And then you just notice what was it that gave rise to that. And then you keep doing it, and the moments get longer and they get deeper. That's the process for most people. And then it takes as long as it takes, and that's okay. But certainly, I was asking how many people doing this retreat have a daily practice, and I think 3 people put their hand up. So if it might be the case that some people are very diligent and too shy to say so, being modest. But in general, it's certainly going to increase your chances of developing more samadhi if you have a daily practice. And I would really recommend actually that it's a morning and evening practice. And then once you've established a morning and evening practice, that you add the afternoon so that it becomes a morning, afternoon and evening practice. So this, if one really wants more samadhi, this is what you have to do. You might get it in a 7-day retreat. I mean, I hope you do. But it's not very common as far as I'm aware. And even among monks. So monks get more samadhi, but not necessarily absorptions. So that's important to understand. And there's a lot of people overestimating jhana. So this is another thing, is that it's important to have a good teacher, because in America it's a bit scary now, because there's these lay teachers teaching jhanas, and of course I've asked some of my teachers, do you think this person has jhana? Even the teacher doesn't have it, but he thinks he does, and then he's telling the lay people, yeah, you've got jhana, and I'm a sotapanna, and so are you. And so it's a bit scary, because if you're a well-practicing monk and you don't have jhana, and you go to America and the lay people start telling you about their jhana, it's a bit embarrassing. And it's an awkward thing to have to address. So the thing is, upajjhara samadhi, which is neighborhood concentration, is actually a very peaceful state. It's very peaceful. And so a lot of people think that their upajjhara samadhi is jhana. And this is where you need a very skilled teacher who can see where you're at, and a teacher who's more developed than you, and he can say no. So that's what's happening to some people in America. They think that their khanika samadhi, which is momentary samadhi, is upajjhara samadhi, and they think that their upajjhara samadhi is jhana, but it's not. So this is a danger. And like I was saying, we just practice with as much samadhi as we can generate, and then we allow the mind to become as peaceful as it can and enjoy that peacefulness, no problem. What Ajahn Achalo teaches, and this is really practical and sensible and helpful, is if when you come to your meditation your mind is becoming peaceful, just allow it to be peaceful and lead it to as much peace as is possible. If it's not peaceful, then use reflection to make it peaceful. So this is picking up the panya, the wisdom power and using it and developing something. Actually use your mental faculties, use your intelligence to incline the mind towards peacefulness. This morning we did our death reflections, and a few people experienced some peacefulness after contemplating on the ways that we might die. So that's the way that you use wisdom to incline the mind towards peacefulness, and Ajahn Mahabua talks about that as well. And then another way to practice is, if the mind becomes peaceful easily in some sits, let it be peaceful and allow it, and lead it to as much peacefulness as it will develop. And when it moves from the peacefulness, then you use your reflective mind to reflect on the nature of the body, on the nature of characteristics. You give your mind something to work on. So this is the thing people need to do. If you're really interested in wisdom or samadhi, you want to be looking at like 45-minute, 1-hour sessions every day, twice a day if possible. And then you can be confident that you will develop some more samadhi and some wisdom. And just repeat what Ajahn Anand says. It's like, if the mind is becoming peaceful, let it be peaceful and just enjoy it, enjoy the peace. When it moves from its peacefulness, as it does, investigate. 3 characteristics: nature of the body, sense bases, give it something to do. If you come to sit and the mind isn't peaceful, then use your wisdom faculty to reflect wisely, to bring it to some peace, and then allow it to be peaceful. This is a process where you're using different path factors to develop the path in a balanced way. Okay, so the last question is how to protect ourselves when we visit a friend in hospital or attend a funeral or a wake, because this person says they usually fall sick afterwards. So it is possible that people with kind of sensitive, open minds can pick up some negative energies. It's possible. I think the best protection, we were talking today at length, the benefits of metta, and that if one develops a genuine capacity to establish the heart of loving kindness and to radiate that outwards, has a very protective quality. And of course it's the best attitude to bring to someone who's sick as well. So and also the best attitude to bring to a funeral or a wake, if you can spread some loving kindness to, if there are any ghosts or spirits around, that you have a mind of loving kindness. But it requires a discipline. So this is where we come back to the same point, is that if you actually want to have something there ready to use when you need it, you have to keep generating it. In order to be able to have it there when you need it, you need a daily discipline. So if you're going to be doing a half an hour, 45 minutes before work, that you'd spend 10 minutes on the metta practice at the beginning of the sit or at the end of the sit. And as you fall asleep, that you're doing some metta practice, that you're training yourself to generate metta citta, and that you can do it at will. But it takes a discipline, it takes a training. Another thing to do, if you can't do that, at least when you get home, that you do your chanting. And then this is relying more upon Kanika Samadhi, just getting some brightness, recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, also very protective. Recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. Chant before you go, chant after you go. If you can't get it together with the meditation discipline, develop a chanting discipline. Anyway, lots of stern advice from Ajahn Achalo, and I appreciate all of your efforts, and just doing my job. Just want to check, because I've been kind of talking just by myself here. Did people get what I'm saying about developing spiritual faculties in a balanced way, and then letting jhana blossom at its own time? Does that seem reasonable to people? Good, because that's what my teachers have taught me.